Shalom, welcome to Challenging Torah, a project of the Malibu Jewish Center and Synagogue, as we enter the book of Leviticus. Vayikra. And the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him out of the tent of meeting, saying, "Speak to the people of Israel." Vayikra, the word literally means to be called. I can't help it. I always think of Carole King, believe it or not. I know it's the hair, where she goes, "When you call out my name, and you'll know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again." You don't need to hear me sing the rest of winter, spring, summer, or fall. I'll be there when you call. You got a friend. This is God calling to us. And my listening, winter, spring, summer, and fall. But in order to listen, I need to let my ego get out of the way. Otherwise, I can't hear. And so very famously, the Vayikra is finished with a small aleph at the end, a tiny letter. There are a number of those in Torah. It's a tiny, tiny letter, just like there's a big dalet at the end of the Shema, where we say Adonai Echad with a big D. This is with a small, tiny aleph. Often, for 2,000 years, they've asked the question, what's up with the little aleph, right? And I think it's about humility and the ability to shut our own program down and listen when we're called. Sometimes we don't want to hear, or what we are hearing runs contrary to what we feel is what we need at the moment. And generally, as does this portion, it involves some sort of sacrifice. You know, in other religious faiths, clergy is referred to as a calling. People will say to me, "When did you first feel called to the rabbinate?" And it's kind of a strange moment. And then I realized, yes, it is a calling. It will involve some sacrifice, certainly of personal time, often for clergy of money. But all of us live lives, both called and in a place of sacrifice. Anybody who's a mom knows that you sacrifice much of your life for your kids. Whether they're sick, you're driving them, it affects your work world. We sacrifice for our parents. We sacrifice for much of what we do in life so that we can, in some way, heed an internal calling, whether it's to be a parent, whether it's to be someone who serves others. If we can just hear what's called that still small voice. When God calls Moses, he says, "Adam ki yakriv mikem korban ladonai." The person who is going to bring a sacrifice to God. Here are the instructions. This Mishkan, this Mikdash, this holy space is for everyone so that they can come and make a connection. The word korban is connected to the word karov, which means to bring oneself closer to God. Now we're astounded that this is about animals. I mean, we're horrified at places like SeaWorld that seems to have abused orca whales, much less sacrificing them on an altar. I mean, does God really exist because God loves barbecue? I don't think so. Rashi points out that we kind of blew it with the golden calf. We couldn't handle a completely abstract deity. We needed to do something. And often I think if I could just, make a gesture that would show my tshuva, my feeling that I would like to make atonement for something. And the sacrificial system, which we will discuss in greater detail as we go through this book, the sacrificial system isn't just for when you have a giant sin, but maybe if you're uncomfortable about something, you can go put a small pigeon, a cake, it doesn't have to be a bull, on the altar. This is the way all human beings at that point connected to God. Here we are, 2016, and we know that with the year 2000, more or less, we went through another paradigm shift. Interesting, in the year 70 AD, this temple, where all sacrifices came, where the priests lived by this holiness code that had to do with, did you lay this sacrifice out properly? The temple burned to the ground, the paradigm shifted, and the rabbis, who had already begun to assert their power of study and prayer, morphed the entire system into a place where we prayed 3 times a day rather than give sacrifices 3 times a day. And we came close to God through the words of our heart. Study and prayer became the way, lekarev, to give a korban. Well, here we are at the beginning of the 21st century, and there's a serious shift going on. Synagogues are losing membership. The role of the rabbi isn't quite the same. Yet, when you ask most Americans, much less Jews, and certainly the people who belong to this synagogue, what are you seeking? They're seeking a connection, a personal connection to God. Yes, we're seeking community, but we're seeking that place where we can likarev, we can connect, link ourselves to a sense of the divine. Can I hear God? Can God hear me? We're in a time of great change. And yet, this is also Shabbat Zachor, always before Purim, when we are told to remember as well as to listen. Haman is the story of a descendant of Amalek. That's why it's Shabbat Zachor. And Amalek is the one we will remember, who cut down the weak and the feeble and the ill as the Jews crossed the Red Sea. He was the one who had no patience for those who didn't have the strength to go on. That's the Jewish definition of evil. And evil, we are told, will always be with us. You shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under the sky. You shall not forget. And in that paradox, we approach Purim, where everything is turned on its head, and we are told, don't forget, remember. May we find great joy at this time of Adar, and may we remember to stop and to listen to the small Aleph, the voice that calls us. Shabbat Shalom.